Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. We haven't heard much recently in regards to the Gilgo Beach case. Of course, Rex Heuermann is sitting in the Suffolk County Jail right now, awaiting trial. Who knows exactly when that's going to occur? But we've heard some from extraneous information in regards to his wife. That's who's in the thumbnail right there, Asa Ellerup. And here she is in that picture right there. Through this case, we had seen the wife. Here she is in front of the house with her children. And, you know, besides the fact that this case is a horrific crime, it's been a soap opera in so many other ways, in the ways that, you know, attorneys, lawyers figure out ways, and that's her attorney to the right in this thumbnail that's on the screen right now, Robert Macedonio. And we know that Asa Ellerup has gotten a 7-figure contract to do a documentary on the Gilgo Beach case. So if this wasn't real life, I don't think you'd be able to make something like that up, because it's sort of, what the most important thing about this case, of course, is right there. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartolome, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, who were known as the Gilgo Four. And there are also 7 more victims that we don't know for sure if they were can be tied to Rex Heuermann. But the investigation is by no means over. And with all this extraneous other information that's coming up, not necessarily by the police investigators, but by attorneys, attorneys such as Robert Macedonio, who is representing Asa Ellerup, Ves Matev, who is representing the children of Rex Heuermann, Asa Ellerup. They also need an attorney. Everyone needs an attorney these days, you know. Everyone is so famous that they have to have their own attorney. So, you know, this case really sort of took off after being dormant for so long, when Rodney Harrison started a task force with Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney. And that was started on February 15th, 2022. After less than a year on the job, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, who was a former NYPD chief of department, he started a task force. And obviously to investigate the Gilgo Beach murders, bringing investigators from the state, the county, and the FBI together for the first time, in addition to Suffolk County Corrections, you know, as we said, the FBI, the state police investigators, who ultimately came up with one of the biggest leads on this case, and that was finding that Chevy Avalanche that was in all kinds of investigative reports over the years, but they had no idea where this car was. And so putting together this task force was one of the most important things. So we're going to talk about how right now Asa Ellerup, again in this thumbnail right there, makes a statement that she doesn't believe Rex, her husband, is capable of committing the crimes he's charged with. And we're going to dig into that a little bit, because there also is a thing that we know in the true crime world and the real crime world as evidence. And evidence is what gets people convicted of crime. So hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. And you're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped in 10th and Ranch Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
So, Asa Ellerup, the wife of Rex Heuermann, says that Rex is not capable of committing the crimes of which he's charged with. And she was married to him for, I believe, 27 years. So, who would be more qualified to make that statement than Asa Ellerup? And this was her making a statement yesterday on WABC News.
The estranged wife of Rex Heuermann is speaking out. Heuermann is accused of killing 4 women whose remains were found near Gilgo Beach on New York's Long Island in 2010. But his wife, Asa Ellerup, is now questioning whether he could have committed the murders.
Like anybody with their spouse, you don't want to believe they're capable of this. He's accused of some heinous crimes, and she wants to see and hear the evidence in the courtroom, not the media or the podcast.
In a statement released by her attorneys yesterday, Ellerup said, "I will listen to all of the evidence and withhold judgment until the end of trial." Her lawyers adding that she visits Heuermann weekly and still maintains that Rex is not capable of the crimes he is accused of. Ellerup filed for divorce in July after her husband was arrested, but remained at their Long Island home. She and her adult children, seen here in these DailyMail.com photos, reportedly slept on mats after investigators tore apart the house, slicing open bathtubs and digging up the yard during their search. Ellerup also reportedly signed a 7-figure deal to participate in a documentary following the family during Heuermann's trial. Asked why she's speaking out now, her lawyer told ABC News she has visited Rex several times since the last indictment and wanted to reiterate she doesn't believe he's capable of this. Rex Heuermann has pleaded not guilty. A trial date has not been scheduled.
So, Rex, not guilty. He's not capable of that, according to his wife. I saw some of the most cynical of you in the chat, which I really appreciate, that said that perhaps she wants to be in the public eye to help her documentary, because now all of a sudden she's doing this documentary and she wants to be out in the public eye. Let's not forget, her hair was found on 2 of the victims, and I believe also a hair from her daughter, as well as DNA from Rex Heuermann was found on the victims. So how would that get there? And through very high-tech testing of DNA, very high-tech processing of DNA, they were able to identify this mitochondrial DNA, evidence that they weren't able to process many years ago. They are now very much capable of. So I want to play a little bit of that, also of the evidence that was found on the bodies, and then you determine how could she say that her husband's incapable of this.
New developments in the case against the accused Gilgo Beach serial killer. A DNA sample taken from the estranged wife of alleged murderer Rex Heuermann, reportedly matching genetic material found on the remains of 3 of the Gilgo Beach victims. Their bodies were discovered wrapped in burlap in a marshy area on Long Island more than a decade ago. Correspondent Laura Ingle is live in Long Island, New York. So, Laura, what does this DNA match mean for the case?
Good afternoon. You know, this is certainly an explosive headline, but if verified, this could mean an even greater link between Rex Heuermann, the suspect in this case, and his wife, Asa Ellerup, to the victims. But again, we're waiting for that public verification coming from the district attorney's office. But this is a really big deal if it can be verified. If you think about it, like with the pizza crust, tying that to Rex Heuermann and the victims, that is what this report is talking about, is this possible DNA match between Asa Ellerup's cheek swab and material that was found on some of the victims. And this is all being hung on Newsday, which is reporting that that cheek swab sample taken from Asa, the wife of the Gilgo Beach suspect, matches that material. There have been previous reports that hair found in the burlap wrapped around some of the victims bared a close likeness to Ellerup. And now there appears to be this possible stronger link. Also important to note, the prosecutors have not charged Asa Ellerup with any crimes and say she was out of town at the time of the murders. Rex Heuermann was arrested and charged with the murders for 3 of the 4 victims in the Gilgo Four, whose remains were discovered along a stretch of Ocean Parkway on Long Island years ago. A grand jury is still investigating him as a prime suspect in the 4th case and is said to be close to a conclusion that could come before Christmas.
Well, at this point, we know he was indicted for the 4th, which was Maureen Brainerd Barnes. So this is a dated video, but it gives a lot of very good information.
And many here on Long Island are wondering how this new information could possibly affect that big Peacock deal we've been hearing about. That's just speculation. But now that there's this splashy headline that there could be more DNA evidence linking Asa Ellerup to these victims, there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered and a lot more testing that we hope to hear about coming from the DA's office in the coming weeks. Back to you.
Thank you.
So, as we know, there's been several people, and I'll play a little bit later of John Ray, Attorney John Ray, who we actually had on the show, who believes it and says he has witnesses who can swear to the fact that Asa Ellerup knew all about what Rex Heuermann was up to. In fact, they used to have swinging parties in their house. And this was right from Attorney John Ray, who also held a symposium in regards to this, where he brought forth more witnesses. So this case is, you know, when you talk about truth is stranger than fiction, yeah, it is a little bit strange that that they can, you know, come forth with some of this information. And then if John Ray, if his information is correct and he has witnesses that can attest to the fact that Asa Ellerup was involved, then why wouldn't District Attorney Ray Tierney be looking at her as a suspect? If you guys remember, very early in this investigation, in fact, right when they made the arrest of Rex, the Suffolk County Police Department, Rodney Harrison, said Asa Ellerup is not considered to be a suspect. She's been cleared. And I thought at that time, when that was first put out there, that that was rather strange, that I could not believe that they cleared her that soon. But again, they had been looking at him, Rex Heuermann, for over a year. When they formed the task force, they obviously were looking at her. But with all of the evidence, specifically the DNA evidence, I didn't think that they needed to clear her that quickly. Why couldn't they have waited a little bit longer? You know, this was 7 months ago. Robert Macedonio, and I find this really interesting. He's the attorney for Asa Ellerup. And 7 months ago, he was representing her, and he went on all, he was, you know, on all the talk shows. And it's a little different what he was saying 7 months ago as compared to what he's saying now. Let's see what he was saying on with Anjanette Levy and Law and Crime. He's sort of an interesting guy, Robert Macedonio.
Any percentage of the allegations that have been in the media are true. It's been an irreparable breakdown of the marriage.
The lawyer for the wife of suspected Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann talks about what her life has been like since his arrest and why she filed for divorce. I'm Anjanette Levy. Welcome to Law and Crime's Sidebar Podcast. Asa Ellerup's life was turned upside down nearly 3 weeks ago when her husband, Rex Heuermann, was taken into custody for the murders of 3 women whose remains were found on Long Island's Gilgo Beach many years ago. Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amberlynn Costello. Their bodies were found wrapped in camouflage burlap along Oceanside Parkway in 2010. The DA says Heuermann's DNA was found in the burlap along with the DNA of his wife. Heuermann is also the prime suspect in the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. 8 sets of remains were found on Gilgo Beach in 2010 and 2011, including an Asian male and a toddler. The others were women. Ellerup, her daughter, and son went back to their home in Massapequa Park last week after police searched it for more than a week. Her attorney shared photos with us from inside the home. It shows what it looks like following the search, and frankly, It's a complete mess. Ellerup filed.
You know what's sort of funny? What's funny to me, because I know some people that were on the scene of that search warrant, and they said that home was an absolute disaster before they searched it. So after they searched it, was it messed up? Yeah, but before they searched it, it was no better. It was a hellhole. I don't want to use the other word, the four-letter word, but it was disgusting. And I was told that detectives couldn't stay in there for more than 15 or 20 minutes. It smelled so horrible. So it's sort of funny the press reports this as like, look what the police did to this house. No, I think the house was a disaster before that.
For divorce following her husband's arrest, but that doesn't mean she's not in contact with him. Here's Heuermann's attorney, Michael Brown, outside of the courthouse this week.
He's had contact with his wife, yes, and family members. I don't think she's visited yet, obviously, because she doesn't want to be ambushed by the press. So she hasn't visited him at the jail yet. No.
Brown also spoke about what Heuermann has told him about the murders and his arrest.
What has my client told me? He told me he didn't do this.
He didn't do it, of course.
The attorney's office has a whole office. They're the biggest law firm in this county. I'm one guy, right? So Ms. Koish is going to be co-counsel on this. We have other attorneys that I expect are going to be assisting on this. And just to pour through the discovery is an enormous task. There's no plea deal. He said from the moment I met him that I did not do this. So we're prepared to go forward. We will.
It's amazing the journey that we've all taken with this case, and how, when you think of it, goes back really more than 27 years. If you conclude Karen Vergata as one of the Gilgo Beach victims. And then all of the twists and turns and the corruption out in Suffolk County with Chief James Burke, and how nothing was done with this case for years, even though the evidence was right in the case folder. And then as we start hearing all the different people talking about this, and then now the turns that it's taken, it's just, you really need a scorecard to really stay on top of this case and all the characters in this case.
Defend this case in a court of law, and we will go to trial in this case.
But the district attorney has said that they are confident that Heuermann is their man.
This is a 13-year case, so as you saw, we have a great deal of information, evidence, photographs, reports to provide to the defense counsel. We've begun that process. I think it was 8 gigabytes of material, which is a tremendous amount. And that's just the beginning. We're going to continue to do that on a rolling basis. And, this case, the charges in the indictment are just allegations. So this is the first step in the process of proving those allegations. So we look forward to undertaking that process.
Meanwhile, media and true crime enthusiasts have swarmed the neighborhood in Massapequa Park, where Heuermann lives, out of curiosity. Law and crime producer Alyssa Fisher approached Ellerup to see if there was anything she'd like to say.
She looked exhausted, to say the least. Just bloodshot. Her lips were pink.
Well, obviously, guys, this is right after the arrest of Rex Heuermann. I believe it was July 13th. So that whole summer was, of course, a whirlwind of activity for law enforcement and for defense attorneys and everyone else, victims' families that were involved in this case.
Pale. She looked like I'm sure, had maybe just woken up from a nap. She was in loungewear. She just looked sad as she said, "No, I'm sorry. I'm not interested in speaking right now." And completely understandable. She's had a really difficult few weeks.
Joining me to discuss the impact that the arrest of Rex Heuermann has had on his family is the attorney representing his wife, his now estranged wife, Asa Ellerup. Bob Macedonia, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Now, this is also the attorney, Robert Macedonio, who orchestrated this entire 7-figure documentary that Asa Ellerup is now doing. So you got to remember this, what we're watching is 7 months ago. And this is what he was saying 7 months ago.
On.
For having me. I appreciate it.
Bob, first of all, how did you come to represent Asa Ellerup. Have you known her for a long time, or did you just meet her through your current representation?
We met her through a current representation. We were retained on the Saturday morning after her husband was arrested, just to be a buffer between her and the police department and handle all communications between her and the DA's office and the police department. And then we followed up with discussing the marital issues and filing for the divorce.
So you're representing her on a number of fronts.
Correct. We are her attorneys for all the matters right now.
Okay. Why did she decide to file for divorce? I think the answer may seem obvious to many people, but this is still somebody she has spent decades of her life with. So I'm sure this has come as a shock.
It's come as a shock, but as you can imagine, even if any percentage of the allegations that have been in the media are true, it's been an irreparable breakdown of the marriage, and she just needs to move forward protecting herself at this point. It's going to take years for her husband's matters to play out in court, and honestly, we just need to protect her and have her move forward as quick as we can.
And when you say protect her, what do you mean by that?
She's obviously whatever the liability he may be involved with civilly, we don't want.
Folks, I'm going to take Robert Macedonio off the screen right now. I just want everyone to sit back and think. Asa Ellerup lived with this serial killer for 27 years. Their house looks like something. Massapequa Park, Long Island, is a middle to upper middle class neighborhood. Rex Heuermann owns his own business. He's an architect in Manhattan, has an office in Manhattan. And you see the way his house looked, right? So what's wrong with that picture? That his house, you could see even in this picture, the paint peeling from the windowsills. I think one of the windows looks broken over there. It's a disaster. So is it believable that Asa Ellerup had no idea as to what her husband was up to? Is that believable? I think not. I think she had to have seen signs of it herself. And if she didn't, I think that Richella Pranzo, good to see you, Richella. From the start, I said she knew involved in actual murders, not sure, but played some part in it. Richella, I happen to agree with you. I don't think that she took part in the murders, but I have to think that she knew that her husband was a strange bird and was involved in some illicit activity. To think that she had no clue. And then when you look at the house, you look at the fact that he went out a lot of times real late at night, unexplainably, and it'll say in the case that, he committed the murders, or it seemed, if they could draw a timeline, he committed the murders when Asa Ellerup was out of town. Her kids were out of town with her, although Attorney John Ray says that's not true. So what is true? And Attorney John Ray says that she was involved in swinging. And to tell you the truth, I didn't buy that. I really don't believe those stories that John Ray brought forward. And as I said, we had him on the show. Many people got really annoyed at us because we asked him some very tough questions, and people wanted us to just let an attorney say whatever he wants to say without us coppers, and we're the coppers, we're the ones used to being questioned, without us asking him tough questions. And guess what? That's not what it was going to be. And John Ray is a really charismatic person, and people want to like the guy. People want to love the guy. But I find his stories not to be too believable, to tell you the truth. I don't think they're properly vetted at all. Let's go back to Robert Macedonio. And again, Robert Macedonio, this is 7 months ago.
I want to be responsible for any of that. She's not involved in any of this. She needs to make decisions as an independent person, not being a married person, protect her, her children, and just honestly move forward, putting her life back together. Her life has been thrown into complete upheaval.
I was going to ask you, how is she doing? We see the photographs of her in the news on media websites. And I didn't know her before this happened. None of us did, but she definitely looks stressed, as you would imagine she would be, and probably like she hasn't slept in weeks.
She's emotionally and physically exhausted. Like you said, she hasn't slept in weeks. It goes where you can't get an hour or two of sleep here or there. There's not been a full night sleep that's gone on. Since they returned to the home, the media bangs on the door throughout the days, even late into the night, which then gets the dog barking. And just between that and her children, crying themselves to sleep at night, they're in their 20s and 30s, but still, this is a traumatic event for the entire family. For her, and I mean her and her two children. I'm not speaking about her husband. What they're going through right now, and they're innocent victims in this whole matter.
I was going to ask you about that. People always speculate and ask questions. Did she know anything? Was she involved? Did the family have any inkling whatsoever? And it's been reported, and in the bail application, it said that Asa was out of town when these alleged murders, they're murders, but when his alleged involvement occurred in these crimes. Is there anything she's shared with you that you can share with us that indicates that she may be looking back and hindsight's 2020?
She has no independent knowledge of even the dates and times that they're alleging these crimes to take place. The only thing that we've gained from this is what the media has put out. The DA's bail application, as you just stated, eliminates her from being in the jurisdiction when these crimes are committed. They, I'm sure, have extensively investigated that prior to making that statement, or they wouldn't have ruled her out in their bail application. So I'm confident that she had no idea any of this was going on and was not involved in any of it.
So, of course, he says he's confident. She's not involved in anything. She has nothing to do with anything. She knows nothing. She sees nothing. I happen not to believe that. And I think that I'm not saying she was complicit in the murders or was an accomplice to the murders, but I just feel that she had to know that something bad was going on with her husband. Tina Powers from the chat. Good evening, everybody. Finally caught a live chat. Hello, Bill and friends. Hello. N. Diaz, where she goes, has a major problem of human organ trafficking. Rex could ship dogs. Well, I don't want to get into these conspiracies. That's too off the charts. There's enough sensationalism with this case without creating anything. And this was Channel 2 yesterday. Again, it came up with the breaking news that Asa Ellerup says that she does not think her husband is capable of these crimes.
Of the accused Gilgo Beach serial killer says she wants to give him the benefit of the doubt. CBS 2's Jennifer McLogan spoke to a neighbor in Massapequa about their conversations with her.
Mail delivered, no response from inside the Heuermann home. Neighbors in Massapequa Park are curious after hearing Asa Ellerup, the wife of the accused serial killer, declare that her jailed husband is not capable of the crimes.
She said to me that she didn't think he did this.
Etienne Devalier, retired FDNY, has lived next door to the Heuermanns for 28 years.
That house is a mess, and he was spending a fortune on hookers. I told her to her face, and she said, no, he was. I said, yes, he was. I said, yes, he was. He was spending a fortune on call girls and wouldn't drop a dime in that house.
In her statement, Ellerup said, I will listen to all of the evidence and withhold judgment until the end of trial. I have given Rex the benefit of the doubt, as we all deserve.
And she also emphatically wanted me to express sympathy for the victims.
Robert Macedonio, Ellerup's attorney, acknowledged his client served Heuermann with divorce papers inside the jail.
You can go forward with your divorce and still not believe that your spouse of 27 years was capable of being a serial killer.
Despite Ellerup's claim she visits her husband weekly, the sheriff says it's been 7 times since his July arrest. State-of-the-art nuclear technology is being used to link Heuermann to the crime, which includes DNA from their daughter Victoria's energy drink, discarded leaving the LIRR, and hairs that come from Asa.
I would love to see her as a witness to the defense, but that's up to them. Ultimately, it would be helpful to the prosecution case. We have nuclear DNA that was recovered from 3 out of the 4 victims. That nuclear DNA is consistent with the profiles of the defendant, his daughter, and his wife.
Prosecutors reiterate they believe Asa Ellerup and her daughter had nothing to do with the killings. Rex Heuermann is back in court next month. On Long Island, Jennifer McLogan, CBS 2 News.
So again, you hear the prosecution says that they believe that Asa Ellerup has nothing to do with with this case. But it's, I want to just show something here. This is the arrest affidavit on Rex Heuermann has the most unbelievable amount of information. And I actually have a hard copy right in front of me that I always keep close to me because there's so much information in this. And this is actually the bail application. And if you don't believe that Rex Heuermann is capable of this, I want to bring your attention to page 18. Legal process served on Google seeking records or accounts associated with the device identifiers of these additional burner cell phones. I'm going to put it on the screen so you'll be able to see it, and I'll have to enlarge it. I have to make this thing much bigger. Let's see. There we go. Put it up on the screen. I should even make it bigger. Okay. It's actually, I'm going to remove it from the screen because I just did something wrong. But what they're saying in this bail application, it goes over some of his searches in. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Okay, let's see if we can put it up on the screen now. This is the bail application form, and this is page 18 of it. Okay, here we go. Now, these are some of the searches that he was making on an email account called Thork email account. A search warrant revealed that the Thork email account associated with burner cell phone, and they give the cell phone number, was used to conduct thousands of searches related to sex workers, sadistic torture-related pornography, and child pornography, including, and it lists 30 different sites, and I'll just go over a few of them. Mistress Long Island, Mature Escorts Manhattan, girl begging for rape porn, teen girl begging for rape porn, pretty girl with bruised face porn, torture redhead porn, 10-year-old schoolgirl. So these are some of the things that this man, who was incapable of committing a crime like this, according to his wife, this is some of the things that he was searching. And of course, she could not believe that he could possibly be involved in that. Fuzzy Doxy from the chat, thank you so much for the $9.99 super sticker. Thanks for keeping us informed. Good works. Well, thank you, Fuzzy Doxy. Appreciate that. So these, and as I said, the bail application, which is a 32-page document that you can easily pull up yourself and read it. It's the most informatory and the most information you will get on this case that allows you really to understand what's going on in this case, because it's so complicated and there's so many moving parts. And you know something about all these moving parts? We don't know half of them. We don't know the results of the search warrant of his home. We don't know the results of the search warrant of his office. We don't know the results of the search warrant of the storage facilities that Rex Heuermann kept. So all of those things, we don't know a half of it. So when his wife says that, oh, she doesn't believe he's capable of doing it, I think that's a little bit far-fetched. I think that she's got to believe that when you read the evidence, and when will she believe it? When she hears even more of the evidence that's out there? Because right now she hasn't had enough. But it's to me, it's suspect because of the money in regards to the documentary. You know, folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. And hit that like button, share us with your friends and your family. If you want to contribute to this channel, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with count 'em 5 different levels, and you can contribute to this channel in that way. I want to play a little bit of John Ray. And as I said, I have nothing against John Ray. I think he's a charismatic guy. I think his heart is in the right place. I just think, like everyone else, he has to be questioned. And he questions, he presents evidence that he says that Asa Ellerup, Rex Heuermann's wife, was a swinger. And she knows all about this stuff. I'm going to play a little bit of this sort of famous press conference he had with, to his right on the screen is Rodney Harrison, the former Suffolk County Police Commissioner.
I should point out that we obtained from these 2 affidavits, their names will go unmentioned. Their names are blotted out of the affidavits, but the affidavits will be available to you right after the press conference. As to the first one I'll talk about, this is a witness who has every reason to have no bias, no interest in the case whatsoever. She was not a sex worker, is not a sex worker, and instead, back in the 90s, in the 1990s, she was what is known then and now as a swinger. She would have a sex partner, and they would go to certain sex clubs in New York City where they would switch partners with other people of like kind. One of the most important places that they would go was called La Trapeze on West 27th Street in New York, right near Rex Heuermann's office. And this was a notorious place for swapping, for switching partners. Sometimes several hundred people at a time would be involved in this place in its heyday. Its heyday was in the late 90s, right at the time that Karen Brigada is involved in this case. In this situation, this particular woman was dating a police officer from New York City who was in narcotics, a detective, and they would go to these switchy clubs, these swapping clubs. At a certain time, at or about Valentine's Day of 1996, I believe, the couple went to La Trapeze, and I think it was on the wall at La Trapeze where an advertisement was placed to go to a house in Massapequa Park for partying, for switching, for swapping. She went with her boyfriend out to Long Island, but before they went, her boyfriend picked up a woman in New York, in the city, who had apparently just gotten out of jail, and she was disheveled and hungry, and she was a sex worker. We don't know the details yet of how he came to know her, but he knew her. And she came in the car with the 2 of them. They went to Massapequa Park. Before they got there, they stopped at a gas station, and the girl who was with them expressed some apprehension about where they were going and why. That was all wiped out when it was pointed out that he's a police detective, so don't worry, no problem. They ended up going to Rex Heuermann's house. In the house was the wife of Rex Heuermann and Rex Heuermann and the other girl. The other girl who we believe to be Karen Vergata. This girl disappears downstairs at the house. Rex Heuermann disappears. And according to our witness and other witnesses I've talked to, when men are swingers with their partner, very often they switch sexually. They go back and forth between male and female. And so Heuermann leaves the main floor and disappears either into another bedroom or downstairs. It's not clear. And the witness talks to Rex's wife. She doesn't want to have sex like she had expected to occur because...
I just want to point something out, and I while we're watching this. Rodney Harrison's body language to me says so much. And what it says to me is that he took part in this, but he doesn't believe it. He's not really buying it. Look at the way he is. He's just not showing any enthusiasm for this. He's not showing any agreement with this. And I found these stories, I have to say, I don't find them credible. I don't. And it's so long ago from when he was saying this was 1996, right? So it's like 27, 28 years ago. It's like, how could, well, I'm just not buying it. I'm just not buying it. Let's get back to John Ray.
Our client believes because our client is an African-American woman. And Heuermann didn't like that. Ellerup, rather, didn't like that. So there was no sex between them, as was originally planned. Instead, the sex is between Heuermann and the other man. At some point, the witness goes looking for her partner and is kind of upset that he doesn't emerge. He emerges, and finally, they leave, and kind of in a hurry. But when they leave, as they're leaving, the witness points out that she could see in the window, looking out, the girl that had come with them. And she says to her driver, her partner, "What are we doing? Are we taking her?" And the partner says, "Don't worry. They're just playing a game. She stays there. No problem." With that, the girl runs out of the house naked and is running in front of the garage. And now the witness says, "Hey, shouldn't we be taking her? Something's wrong here." And the driver tells her, "No, they're just playing a game. Leave it." And they leave. She never hears about the incident again. She distinctly remembers Heuermann. She also had intercourse with Heuermann that same day. And she kind of buries it, forgets about it, until on TV she sees the picture of Karen Vergata, and she recognizes her and said that's her, and she recognizes Rex Heuermann.
See, I'm having a huge problem with this. And when we had John Ray on our show, I don't believe this whole story. I just think it's outrageous. And I think, what is vettable about that story? Okay, the identification of Karen Vergata, she sees her on TV 27 years later and says, "That's the girl that was with us 27 years ago when we went to the Heuermann's house and when we were going to be swinging. That's the woman that was with us." I find that not believable at all. I don't know. And believe me, when we had John Ray on the show, we took a lot of heat because he's got a lot of fans. People love John Ray. And what is vettable? What is checkable about that story? Well, if that was Karen Vergata, can't we go back to the NYPD and find out if she was arrested? Is a wide window, like 27 years ago. Was she arrested in New York City? Because they said that she had just said that she had been arrested. Can we find that out? Who is this narcotics detective, this NYPD narcotics detective? And we asked Mr. Ray that, and he says he has him and he's ready to be a witness. And I believe the woman who swore to this, she was on Banfield. And when I watched it, I didn't find it all that credible either when I saw it on Banfield. And if this is what they're hanging their hat on in trying to include Asa Ellerup in this, I'm just, I don't know if I'm buying it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm buying that Asa Ellerup was involved in this based on this sworn testimony of this alleged witness that John Ray has. I just am not buying the whole thing. And so then this brings us back to Asa Ellerup.
Sidonio. He is the attorney for Asa Ellerup. Rex Heuermann's wife of 27 years. He was in court with Asa today. Thank you so much, Bob, for coming back on the program. It's good to see you again. So can you sort that out for me? It seemed very odd. I really don't understand what's happening between these two.
Well, I can assure you, Asa was not smiling during the court proceedings. There's nothing to smile about. This is certainly nothing funny. She takes these allegations extremely serious. She did make eye contact with Rex for a very small period of time, probably less than 5 seconds. If there was any facial expression, it's out of nervousness. This is the first time she's ever been in a criminal courthouse, whether it be for Rex or for anybody else. Again, nothing comical about it. There was not a prolonged smile on her face. I sat right next to her. She didn't leave my side the entire day.
Yeah, fair enough.
Nothing funny about it.
I'm not sure that our producer who witnessed this thought that she was smiling at the proceedings or thought anything was funny. I think the impression that our producer got was that she was very much smiling at her husband, making the eye contact, and that it seemed like a good connection between them. But many of us can't understand how a wife, what would go through a wife's mind when your husband of 27 years is arrested with just really damning evidence as the Gilgo Beach serial killer. That's why I'm trying to figure out that the smile. Are they good?
Well, first of all, the first time she saw him was last week, and we keep repeating really damning evidence. The only thing that we have, meaning we, you, me, and the entire world population, is what the prosecution has put out in press statements. The defense has said little to nothing. So she's at the point now where she would like to see for herself and hear for herself what are the allegations against her husband. Nobody wants to believe that their spouse, that they laid next to in bed for 27 years, is capable of these kind of heinous crimes. From the day that he was arrested, she has been told, she brought to the police, command center, your husband did this. You were here. He killed this person, put her there. And she's been processing that, trying to recreate 10, 15 years ago where she was and what happened, which is impossible. So she needs to see and hear it for herself, which I think many of us would have to try to believe our spouse is capable of this kind of heinous crime. She sympathizes for the victims. They certainly didn't deserve to die this way. But again, to think that she slept next to and lived with a murderer, a serial killer, she needs to process that on her own, not believe what everybody else is telling her.
Fair enough. I would have it myself, and we're different. I would have a tough time giving a big smile. I would just be very stone-faced, I think, until I saw
I can assure you there was no big smile. It certainly is nothing to laugh at. She takes it serious.
Yeah.
And there was no, if anything, it might have been a nervous reaction or facial expression. There's no smile.
Okay, that's fair enough. Let's talk about the documentary crews. We're all fascinated about the truck that arrived and loaded in all the camera equipment. And then at court today, the documentary crew was in tow. Tell me about what's going on.
I can't comment on any of that because I'm not at liberty to discuss any of that. So I honestly don't know.
He's the guy that set up the whole thing. I find it amusing that attorneys that set up the whole documentary thing, set up the whole deal. He's not at liberty to discuss it. He doesn't know anything about it.
You didn't work with her? I mean, I would think she would seek counsel before engaging with any kind of documentary crew, right?
I'm not at liberty to discuss any of that, what's going on with that. She was there to see the proceedings for herself, and that's why she went with me.
All right, fair to say. So the other quick question is, and it's a tough one, there have been some allegations by the police commissioner, by Attorney John Ray, that Asa had some knowledge about the sex workers, was somehow actively involved. These are pretty rough allegations. Just want to get your thoughts on that.
My thought on that, and then she spent a good time, listening to John Ray and his press conferences and also the numerous podcasts that spun off from that. John Ray has spent the past 12 years, and Rex Heuermann is the third individual he's accused of being involved in the homicide of his client. He first accused businessman Jimmy Bissett. Then he went on to former police chief James Burke. Now that there's been an arrest of Rex Heuermann, he now wants to have Rex Heuermann tied to these. John Ray is looking for a civil defendant to attach to his client so he could recoup some of the tens of thousands of dollars he spent out of his pocket. Asa Ellerup is not involved in this, was not involved in this, is not a suspect. The DA's office has emphatically stated at their numerous press conferences and bail applications, she was not in the jurisdiction when these crimes took place. She is not a suspect. She was out of the country, either in Iceland or out of New York State when the alleged homicides took place. So even hypothetically speaking, she knew about sex workers. She's not alleged to have been involved in knowing about any of the homicides. It's two different factions.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, she didn't know about sex workers. There was no sex workers at the house when she was there. It's just John Ray, a figment of his.
So very interesting that, again, we're going to go back to the whole premise of this show. Is Asa Ellerup involved? And that and she doesn't believe, of course, that her husband, Rex Heuermann, was capable of committing these crimes that he's being charged with. However, when we look at this case in its totality, people like John Ray are pointing the finger at her that she's involved. Mary Michael, thank you for the $4.99 super sticker. Does anyone know how Kim Allison is doing? Mary, I'm not really feel comfortable talking about Kim, personal health stuff, but let's just all say prayers for Kim. I think that's how I could put it out there. But I don't feel comfortable talking about. I could send you her email, or email me. I'll put the and I'll give you Kim Alliston's email. It's in the chat. I just put our email there. So email me and I can send you Kim Alliston's email. But I think that we would all probably want some confidentiality if we had some health issue. I know I would. So and I'm sorry, I don't mean not to give you the information, but I really like Kim a lot, and I'm praying for her that she heals up. And it's been a while. And Kim was the most active person in the chat I had on this show. She was fantastic, and she's a great lady. So when we talk about this show, though, it's in the context of this case that went on for so many years, and the Gilgo Beach serial killer, and now the wife, Asa Ellerup, isn't believing that her husband's capable of this, isn't believing that he could have done the things alleged in the bail application warrant. And then, of course, she has been cleared by the Suffolk County Police, the Suffolk County DA's office. But however, there are private individuals, private attorneys that are saying that making these allegations about swinging, making these allegations that because her DNA was found on some of the bodies, she should be considered absolutely a suspect in this case. And, when people ask that, like, how did her hair get on the bodies of some of the Gilgo victims? Well, I believe, and it's called evidence transfer, the hairs were in the same room potentially as the burlap bags that Rex used to wrap the bodies in. And to me, that's how the hairs got onto the bodies. Many people have asked a good question about, well, then how come the son's hair wasn't on the burlap bags? Good question. And my explanation for that would be, well, maybe the son didn't go in the room where Rex kept his burlap bags, which were used to wrap the bodies. That's the only way I can really explain that. Is that a good explanation? It's the best explanation I can give. But we got to realize the hair from Asa Ellerup and the hair from the daughter was found on these bodies, as well as DNA from Rex Heuermann. So people have questioned all of that, but that doesn't mean, there's a concept called Locard's, Dr. Edmund Locard's theory of exchange, a principle of exchange. Ed Wallace would cringe if he heard me say theory. Principle of exchange, where evidence can go from one area and be transferred onto another area. It's like a human being walking into a crime scene, and something from your body winds up in that crime scene. As we know, we all lose hairs from our head, 50 to 100 hairs a day from our head. So where are those hairs falling? So if it was a crime scene, they potentially could be in the crime scene. And so those are some of the, the transfer of evidence that happened. And people don't want to accept that. Many people don't want to accept that. This was from like when Rex was first arrested. I want to play this.
Long Island is the man police say is behind 3 of the grisly Gilgo Beach murders, and they say DNA evidence played a key role in catching the 59-year-old architect.
We have all the angles of the arrest covered, but let's start with Sharon Crowley live in that Massapequa Park neighborhood that the suspect calls home. Sharon.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. This is still an active crime scene. As you may be able to see behind me, there are state police and law enforcement from Nassau and Suffolk County who have been here all day. They've been removing evidence from the house that he lived in. We've seen them bring out boxes of things, furniture, what appeared to be a cooler, as they try to unravel the mystery of what is no longer a cold case.
Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us. A predator that ruined families. If not for the members of this task force, he would still be on the streets today.
Investigators announcing a dramatic development in a cold case that has haunted Long Island for more than a decade. Police say 59-year-old Rex Heuermann, a married father of 2 from Massapequa Park, is a serial killer. He's charged with the unsolved murders of sex workers whose remains were found near Gilgo Beach more than a decade ago. Heuermann, who is an architect, was taken into custody at his Midtown Manhattan office. He was arraigned for killing Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. He's also the prime suspect in a 4th woman's murder. The women's remains were found close together, bound and wrapped in camouflage-colored burlap along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. His defense lawyer entered a not guilty plea at the courthouse in Riverhead.
The only thing I can tell you that he did say as he was in tears was, "I didn't do this."
The cold case reopened last year when the new district attorney and police chief created a special task force involving the FBI to take another look at the evidence. Within 2 months, the task force identified Heuermann as a suspect. Detectives linked him to a pickup truck he owned at the time that witnesses reported seeing when one of the victims disappeared. Another huge break came when police matched DNA from pizza Heuermann ate and discarded in a trash can to genetic material found on the woman's remains.
One of the things that we did is we followed him because we wanted to get an abandonment sample of his DNA. Which we were able to do.
Investigators say Heuermann bought burner phones to call his victims and arrange meetings. This is a picture from court documents showing him at a mobile phone store in Midtown Manhattan. In the 13 years since these unsolved cases, science has advanced, helping investigators finally make the break they needed for so long.
Still a big mystery tonight as to what happened.
Well, Heuermann is still in custody. He's expected to have another court appearance next month. As for here live at Massapequa Park, you can see, as we said, law enforcement still considering this a crime scene, and it's likely they will be here for several more days. And this is not the only property that they're searching. They're also searching.
So this was early on in the investigation, and we go back to this, and it was when this arrest was made, it was such a thrilling victory type thing for all of Long Island, for anyone that's been following this case for so many years. And there's so many unanswered questions. And I believe those questions may never be answered unless after the trial, Rex Heuermann is found guilty and is facing life without parole, of course, because there's no death penalty in New York State. If at that point, maybe he would come clean and confess to other crimes that he's done. At this point in the show, I just want to always mention the victims. These young ladies became known as the Gilgo Four: Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. And we always want to remember what this case is about. It's not about Rex Heuermann. It's not about Asa Ellerup. It's not about Johnny Ray, Robert Macedonio, any of the task force. It's about those victims. And in a famous book called Practical Homicide Investigation, the author says that homicide investigators, we work for God. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I just wanted to put that out there. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. This case has sort of been on the back burner with other things going on. And I think that it's going to be brought back into our consciousness again. But when we see things like, Asa Ellerup, and it's almost like you say there's nothing stranger than true life. Truth is much stranger than fiction. And the fact that Asa Ellerup is doing a documentary on this is strange, but it's true, right? So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.